reading. I felt really
It's
dumb.
very technical.
It is really technical. I had no idea that it was called this employment at will.
Yeah, I had no idea. We
Yeah,
had something like that in Mexico. So it's a little similar to that.
You guys have never heard of that before?
That's why I feel dumb. I no.
I did. Well, I was young when I started working. I was 15. I was in high school still. And our bosses all made sure to say, remember, this is at will employment. So basically, they're letting you know they can fire you at any time.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel silly. No clue.
I did think it was interesting, though. I hope this isn't like jumping ahead to what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, but that the U.S. is like known as one of the only countries to have at-will employment. Like other countries don't practice that.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like the European Union. Wow.
Yeah, we have something like that I didn't notice until I read my contract on my previous job. And but the thing is, even though you're hired as we call it empleado de confianza. It's a weird term.
Confianza is
like trust.
Trust, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very much like at will, but they still follow the all the legal requirements that they would follow if that was not the case. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
We lost Susan.
Yeah, we lost Susan. I wonder. Do you remember last? Let me see.
She's trying to.
I'm gonna send her this. If I should just copy. Remember how last time we had to copy and paste the link in the chat window right here? I wonder. I don't even know.
So. Okay, she just joined the group chat. Oh, there you go. Oh, still on her phone.
Are you back?
Yeah. No, yeah, I'm still on my phone, but that's all right. I'll just suffer through.
I know. Sorry. Well, I'm trying to mess with my camera settings here. It just going on. Ridiculous. It's technology sometimes. So. Okay, so does anyone know what the exceptions are then? Susan, we were just talking about employment at will.
Have you heard of that?
I was saying I had no idea.
There were 3: breach of an implied. Is it this? Breach of an implied contract, breach of an implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and violation of a public policy.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, it just it was actually very interesting. It was technical, but it was an interesting read. So and then we learn about the discrimination statuses. It just says to mention that how Title VII, that's huge because Brother Cochran mentions it a few times. It covers race, national origin, gender, religion, the American Disabilities Act, and then age discrimination in Employment Act, which the case study, I don't know. So what do you guys think about Terry and Phil from the case studies?
Oh my goodness.
I hardly need to, I don't know if I should even express my opinion of the person writing this, because it's like, man, what a little brat.
Yeah, I thought it was very petty. Very petty.
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm so glad, because I just go, I can't believe this woman, whatever. It's like a half of a person. How rude. I just kept writing little notes like, is this girl in high school? You know, I just
she was only 27.
True, but
so we don't want to say anything because of Sabiq's young age.
I'm 29.
Are you 29?
Really?
Yeah.
You look younger than 29. I thought you were my son's age. He's 24. I mean, close.
You have a 24-year-old son?
Yes, and he's engaged, that little turkey.
Wow.
You're about to be a
You're a
mother-in-law.
baby.
Yeah, crazy. I can't
That's
take it,
crazy.
but yes.
Oh,
Yep. Okay,
Fun
so
time. Sorry.
so it's okay, Suzanne. You can say whatever you want.
all right. So the company, what is their like? So their financial obligation. What impact does Terry and Phil have on the bottom line?
Well,
Did you guys think they were really that bad?
so
Well,
this is-
go ahead.
so maybe going back a little with Terry and Phil on the difference between both.
Mm-hmm.
So for Terry, the situation is a little bit different than Phil's because everyone knows he's a 2.5 performer, but the
Right.
higher up managing team, right? Since they hired him and they ignored all the evaluations that everyone was saying no, they still went for it, and they are not willing to recognize and really admit they made a mistake. So that's why they don't want the manager to get rid of Terry, even though everyone
Mhm.
knows he's performing bad. So,
And-
and the manager's position is very difficult because for one side, his team is performing at the lower level than they could, and but if he does anything about it, then the people who are like who he reports to, then he gets in trouble with them. So he's like in the middle. He
Mhm.
can't do
Yeah.
anything.
Not where he
And
wants, anyways.
right, and when you see that if they don't give him a 2.5, let's say they gave him a 3.5 or a 3, and then they finally choose to let him go, then
Mhm.
Terry can potentially sue them based on the idea that okay, so if he was getting all these promotions, not promotions, but all these performance reviews that were high, consistently high, what's the justification for them to let him go,
Right.
right?
Right.
Plus, there's age discrimination with him.
Exactly. So then you get into a bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Phil, he's not doing well, but there are all these factors that are accumulating that people like him. Well, not everyone. The top managers don't like him, but the people who he works with directly, they do like him. They do see that he has potential. He could probably be placed in a different area, but there's this pressure from management to actually let him go. And now with all these other problems that he's having, with all these health issues, that is very difficult too.
That is too, because there's a possibility of disability discrimination
Exactly.
Yeah.
for
Exactly.
that.
So what was the girl's name? 27-year-old.
Uh,
Um,
Hold on.
Raquel, what was
I
it?
know Rachel was the other chick.
Raquel was the one that she worked before her. Do
Right.
they even give her name?
I don't even
think
think
they
they say
gave
her
the
name.
name.
Yeah,
She
no,
refers
because
to
she's
herself
just
as I, because she's writing
Yeah.
the paper.
Yeah.
So Miss Type A, I can give her kudos because she was willing to stand up and say, "Hey, you know this guy's no good." Because she had to face all of her peers
Yeah.
Mhm.
and say, "You guys, you have to take care of this. You made this mess." And so for her to stand up and be able to face the music,
Right.
I did like that part about her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
That's
that's the
true.
worst thing. I would not want to be in a position to hire and fire. And that's why I like learning about
Yep.
human resource management, because they don't have to do that. They just give input.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And
So
I was thinking also how okay, so she's super young. She's 27, right? They
Mhm.
want to promote her as the manager, but they want her to kind of gain all this credibility on her team first, so she can later be promoted as manager, and everyone would be like, yeah, that makes sense because of results or
That
whatever.
was in the beginning though,
At
because
the
she's already
beginning. Oh,
Yeah.
she's already?
Yeah,
Oh,
she's in
yeah.
the position now
Oh, I missed that. I thought
where
she
she's
was
giving the
still.
ratings.
Oh, I see. Oh, never mind then.
Okay, well, still tough. So
Yeah.
according to
Yeah.
her, Terry makes no contribution. So all of his salary and benefits are pure cost. And I guess this company only makes $300,000 a year. So financially, Phil seems to be less of a liability than Terry.
Yeah.
I don't know. Still, it's just
Does it say? It doesn't say how much they make, does it?
mm-mm.
No.
No, it
Can't
doesn't say.
imagine it's very much if they only make 300,000 a year.
Just how many points they make.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then looking at ethical obligations, we looked at financial and then legal we just talked about. So what ethical obligations does the manager have to Terry and to Phil?
Oh my gosh. I am taking a ethics class this semester, and let me tell you, it's not my favorite because everybody's ethics, according to this book and the class, they're all different based on social norms and cultural beliefs and how you were raised. So her specific ethics in regards to those two employees could be different than what I suggest. So I don't know. I think
I know that's a tough.
one of the things that they talked about in the paper was the PIP. Did we talk about that yet?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about
No,
it.
we haven't
And
talked about it
how,
yet.
oh,
Read about it.
well, it's coming up in step 3. Sorry, I jumped ahead. But what she was saying was that it's not really an important performance improvement plan. It's their gateway out of the company. And so I think an ethical obligation she has is to actually give them a performance improvement plan and not this made up thing that they use to axe their employees.
Right.
I think as a manager,
Very good point.
if she, if she were doing her job and managing, she would have suggestions for improvement, a plan, and schedule for how often to meet and make sure that you're meeting all these quotas and goals that you guys have set in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's
What do you guys think for ethics?
well, I was going to say that in our other paper, the false promise of layoffs. It says that we eliminated some lower performing employees by doing more rigorous performance reviews and not fulfilling jobs that were vacated through normal attrition. So they were just kind of getting rid of people rather than hiring more in order to cut costs better. I like the idea of when the company will try and make what they're doing work with everybody they have.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand this where they fire somebody and then turn right around and hire a brand new person. It's
Right.
just irritating.
Yeah. So the PIP was pretty much just to have a legal excuse, right?
To have a paper trail.
To fire someone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Protect
Just
themselves against
micromanaging
lawsuits.
someone
Yeah.
instead of actually
Yeah.
helping them improve.
Yeah. So that's a tough question. Her ethical obligations to Terry and Phil.
I think to Terry, the ethical obligation is to let him know how poorly he's performing.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Which is hard in itself.
Right. But I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah,
ethical.
but as a manager, I mean, your job.
And that's what she prided herself on, telling them what they're doing wrong and what they're doing right.
Yeah.
So that's her ethical obligation, is to lay it all out clear.
Yeah. And the management team has the obligation to listen to the reasons why Terry's being giving a 2.5.
Right. Right. I thought it was pretty cutthroat though how she did it. Like, you're not a superstar. She basically had him point out,
Yeah.
like, you're the weakest link. But man, I would hate to be a manager. So yeah, and I think there does have to be an ethical obligation to I mean, he was getting all these high ratings, and then out of the blue, oh,
What's
now he's
this?
getting the lowest. Because even he was like, I thought I was going to get didn't he say a 3?
Uh-huh.
He didn't think he was even going to get a 2.5.
So maybe I think he knew why he's not choosing a 3.5. Why is he choosing a 3? Of course, he was not going to say 2.5 because he knows that puts him in danger. But at 3, he's recognizing that he's not the best performer.
Exactly.
He
Exactly.
knows. But
So
legally, he has all the arguments to sue if they fire him.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I always wonder how these big companies get themselves into these lawsuits when you hear the situation and you're like, it's pretty clear you set yourself up for that. Well, in this very situation, they weren't covering themselves. There's
Right.
too many people involved that opened them up for that recourse of potential.
Well, they kind of combined business and pleasure, and that's where they got in trouble. Because you can't just hire your grandma to work in a position she's not qualified for.
Yeah.
And then be shocked when she's not performing the way she should be.
Exactly.
Exactly. Or he was the scuba diver instructor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was the scuba instructor.
Yeah, and business and personal, it's really hard, but it's so much better when it's cut and dry.
Yes, it's hard to mix
Separate.
the 2.
Yeah.
So what about her or any ethical obligations to the company or the other employees or to herself? See, to the company, I would feel if I were the manager, I would feel an ethical obligation to the company because that they're not performing.
Right. You're giving them these false reviews.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a loss for the company, and it's a loss in productivity for your team.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that saying? You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, that hurt. I never even thought about her ethical obligation to her own team to weed out the riffraff.
Right.
Yeah. So then, of course, there's Phil with his illness. You could very well just let him go.
That's like a movie. They bring in that personal element and your heart goes, oh, but.
Right.
And at the same time, so let's think about this. So he's under treatment right now. He might need a higher income in the future, right? Or start saving for his family. I don't know. So many different scenarios where he will need a higher income each month. And he hasn't been promoted, and he's been working for how many years? 6.
Right, and he missed both promotions.
So
milestones.
For me, the company already failed him by not firing him after the first 3 years. It's like, you're not going to be promoted here, so I think you should look for another job so you can perform better and grow.
And that's how he starts out, saying that he recognized they made clear mistakes we made, and if I had to do it again, I'd do a few things differently. And I just wrote the question, what mistakes? Because he didn't really say what he did that didn't work, but that's definitely probably 2 of them.
True.
Yeah.
All right, so we're supposed to do an analysis of the company's HR practices. So how well do you guys think, in the case, how well do you think the company's HR practices are doing? I think they're terrible.
Yeah, they're
a 6.
HR.
Yeah.
If they had practices in place, they probably wouldn't run into half the scenarios they're in right now.
Yeah. They probably have them, but they're not enforcing them. Managers don't have the autonomy to really be honest with performance evaluations and the hiring process.
Right.
Right. well, the hiring process, I mean, wait, which one was it that failed with every interviewer?
Terry.
Terry.
And they still hired
And they
him.
still
How
hired
is that
him.
possible?
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
I'm sure Raquel, who I believe she was as the head of the department when he was hired, she was one of the people who said, no, I don't want him in my team. But they still didn't care.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
they don't seem to have too much respect for Raquel.
Nope.
No.
Poor thing.
So with the way the company is performing, do you think employees get a clear picture of how they're doing in their jobs?
I
No.
think on this A team or the A type lady, I think they do on hers because she tells them. But I don't think on the rest.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So we had something like that on our performance reviews on my previous job. I just realized how many things I have to say about my previous job. So they had this like 3 or 4 categories of what kind of employee you were, like key contributor or exceptional or low performer, whatever. They had a limited number of employees that could be on that high. How did I say high performer or whatever? Like on the top,
Mhm.
they only had a
Mhm.
certain amount of people who could be under that category. The rest of them, even though they were performing as good, they had to be on a lower category. And when you asked why am I not on the exceptional category, they don't have a straightforward answer.
They could have only one exceptional person. That doesn't make sense.
Just
Wow.
not just one, but just a limited number of employees. And I believe because that was linked to your annual salary raise.
Salary.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think they mentioned something like that. Like we don't have any more 3.5
Yes, they did.
spots, so you have to put Phil on a lower scale, 2.5.
Huh. That
Yeah.
that doesn't seem like a fair way to perform because it's like you're always playing king of the mountain,
Yeah.
Mhm.
fighting
Mhm.
for that top position.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's terrible. So then a couple of questions are about the PIP, the PIP. And Christine, you had mentioned something earlier.
Yeah, I
Or
just
was
was
it?
saying that it's an unrealistic way of helping employees improve. They claim that it's a performance improvement, and by no means is that what it's used for. So they either need to give it a new name or,
True.
just do away with the program altogether. I don't really, they're
Right.
not
Or give them a
using it for what
plan.
it's intended for. Yeah.
Right.
It does seem like it would be a good plan for them to have a last chance at improving and keeping their job.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should really
Yeah.
be a plan to help someone improve, not just to find an excuse that the first mistake. Now you're okay. We have now an excuse to let you go.
Yeah,
'Cause-
we don't need any 2.5s.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. We kind of mentioned earlier this next question. It cracked me up. But it says, do you think this manager can make good decisions about these 2 individuals, or does she seem to be influenced by biases that will be hard to overcome?
Completely.
Some biases.
She has no freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she can make any good decisions about Terry or Phil.
Well, they didn't set her up to be able to make good decisions.
Right.
Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She seems competent in a lot of ways. Just pretty immature about, the judgment she's making. Just because you're fat and bald doesn't mean you are a bad worker.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but then she goes on to say that she knew that Terry kept a gun in his car.
Yeah, what does that have to do with the price of milk?
She was
Right.
worried about retaliation.
Exactly. So
But
to me, that's a bias. Like, why would you think that of somebody? You know, I don't know.
I don't know.
First of all,
Maybe
how does she
she
know?
thinks as a manager, she's qualified to judge everyone.
Right.
You know, and she did have a team that she was in charge of, and they were performing well except for those two. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
You have to give her kudos for some of it, and of course we don't know.
Right. So did you guys do the part B? Did you read the part B? It's kind of
No.
what ended up. Okay. So
Good,
we're
we get
actually,
we get the rest of the story.
yeah, you get the rest of the story. Yes.
Did I?
Which we're actually, as a group in our discussion, we're supposed to kind of commit to a decision about what the manager should do with each Phil and Terry. So are there alternatives to firing Terry, and what are they? What would they be?
I just wonder what. So, whatever her name is, she's afraid to doing
Yeah.
what she already knows she has to do, which is firing Terry.
Mm-hmm.
So she should do it. The question is, how is she gonna do it and get all the management people on board with the decision?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I think it's
'cause
very clear
they-
that she has to fire Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I had to choose between Terry and Phil, I would fire Terry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
He has a gun.
and then
Yeah. That's why you bring the
well,
then.
what message will firing or not firing Terry send to the other employees?
Oh, I think it's a good message. I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
I think it's a good message firing Terry, because then other employees would notice, like, so this guy doesn't do anything. He's just slacking, and he's getting paid the same as that we actually do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So then why should I even try to work harder? I mean,
Right. I think it also sends the message of it pays to know people. So if you know people, higher up in management,
yeah.
even your direct supervisor can't fire you. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you're friends with the person above her, you're safe. So I think firing him would send a clear message that this chick doesn't mess around. And even if you know people,
Yep.
you're out of luck.
Yep.
You still got to toe the line.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has to participate and do their share.
You know, in business, I find that there's a fine line because you have to be hard enough. I don't think I qualify because you have to be hard enough because you can't be so soft and mushy, and because
Mhm.
then you don't get the job done.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
like
Right.
warring against yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I don't know.
What gives you, like, I think what empowers you is when you have a set of rules that are well established and very clear, that justifies every decision that you make.
Exactly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
You have backup all the time, or a good foundation, just like
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just need that good foundation.
It's
I
like-
really like that comment.
It's like with the gospel, the more you know about doctrine and principles, and you're being
Mhm.
obedient yourself, you can teach with more power.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You can stand up and,
Yes.
and speak what you know is right.
Yeah.
Right. I like that, Sabik. Okay. So fire Terry and keep Phil.
Mm-hmm.
Does she have to
Okay.
keep one? I thought
Well,
they
it
were going to fire
says-
both of them.
We can.
Yeah, I think she's got to decide
I
to
would
fire
keep,
both, or you would keep Phil.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't think
For
that's gonna
now.
work.
Not
He's
like
a liability anyway.
She has such a low opinion of him. It's gonna have a bad atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
True. True. Okay. So we're supposed to like read the second part and then come back, but I'm just gonna give you guys a rundown. So the manager ends up talking to Terry and says flat out, she decides to give him a 2.5, but says she was scared to do it. So she sits him down and says she's not gonna do that PIP, the PIP thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then, so of course Terry says, I thought you were giving me a 3.0. She says, nope. What I didn't agree with was she asks Terry, she like calls out another employee and says, well, look at him. He's a superstar and, he's really great. And, are you like, I mean, I thought it was terrible. So she compares him to someone, to quote unquote, a superstar. Yeah.
So she's demeaning him as well. Again,
Yes.
in front of his face
Yes.
instead of just in our paper.
Yeah. And she was honest and just said, do you want to be constantly on the edge? There's a forced curve here. Do you want to be on a team where you are the weakest link? Is that good for your career? So ultimately,
What career though?
Yeah, she's-
Dude is a scuba instructor. He like lucked
Exactly.
into this. I don't even understand why it's a question. The dude is not qualified.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
him.
He's already got another job. He doesn't need this one.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, unless that's like his for fun job, I don't get it.
Yep. So she says, let's skip the PIP, and then she wants to help find him a better job in the company. And
Which-
so,
How about instructing his superiors in scuba?
yes,
Team building.
exactly.
Team building.
Yeah, that's
So-
one way to do it.
So she gives him like 3 months to try and find a job another job within the company. And of course, he did not. So they,
Was he fired?
yep, he was fired. And then in this case, it was interesting. It says he eventually got a job in an engineering company and was promoted to manager
What?
Wow.
in that
He's
company.
gotta have some
Yeah.
other background besides just
It says,
like-
yeah, his background is in engineering.
gotcha.
Okay.
Wow.
So there it is.
Huh.
And so Terry, yep, fired. And then Phil, she was worried that firing him was going to look bad because they would think he was being fired because he was sick.
Right, right.
No, but his boss hated him. Her boss hated him. Personal
Yeah.
vendetta.
Yes, exactly. But they kept Phil, and she gave him a 3.0 on his reviews. And so.
So he must have improved.
Oh, well, he moved to another team, and
Good.
only because they had a free slot open.
Mm.
That's good.
Yeah. So there. Oh, and then it ends with that Phil died not long after.
Oh,
Aw.
sad.
I know.
Why did they have to
That
ruin
was
the story?
Information.
Yeah, they did. I was like,
Wow.
really? Did they have to include that? Okay.
Right.
Well, at least they kept him before that happened. It would have been
True.
worse.
Oh, they would have. Yeah, probably
So
felt worse.
something that I like is, and something that I noticed on good managers, is that they put emotions aside and
Mhm.
like they're trying to be completely objective. So
This is
yes,
hard.
we don't like this person. He's socially awkward or whatever, blah blah blah.
Mhm.
But I'm gonna ignore all that and I'm just gonna focus on facts. Okay, if this person is qualified, he's got these skills. The very last option is going to be fire him. If there is a way for us to use his skills at a different department, then we're gonna do that, and hopefully he's gonna improve his his results or whatever. And so I'm gonna try everything to do to actually use him as a resource. And if that doesn't work and he's making us now have losses, then yes, the option is to fire him.
True.
So that's what I get from both, because from Terry, it seemed kind of obvious that they had to fire him, but they didn't do it. They actually waited for that. They used fire him as the last resource.
Right. Right. Yeah, but can you imagine if she fired Phil and then he died a year later?
It would have been so sad.
That would have been terrible. I would not have liked being the one to decide that. Okay, I think the final wrap up, I think pretty much we covered. Just what can we learn from this case about making decisions about termination? Don't be biased.
He just kind of summed it up right there.
Yeah, he did perfectly.
You have to be compassionate, and what was the other word? It's on the quiz as well.
Oh.
And direct.
Oh. Yes, I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. You have to be both.
Mm-hmm.
Balance.
I agree.
Balanced.
I agree. All right, so that was it for our discussion. So I will go ahead and stop the broadcast.
Okay.
Okay.